Hello everyone, this is my presentation on Asian community in Pittsburgh. As you can see in this title page that I have crossed out my old subtitle on their struggle during COVID-19 pandemic in the city. As on Wednesday, I have noticed that Rosemary Lee and my project has a lot of overlap. So I decided to change a little bit near the second half of my slides so I can have some new content instead of telling you guys pretty much the same issue that she has already discussed. So instead it will be what's next for this community. Still a little background. In this city, Asian community only takes up 6%. As you can see in this chart divided by race, most population in the city are white, followed by the black population. And in this chart, you can see Pittsburgh education level by race. Asian community has the surprisingly highest educational rate. And if you have lived in the city for a while or you're familiar with the situation, you would notice that most Asian in Pittsburgh are here for higher education. You find most of them live in CMU, Pitt, or other college. So it's no surprise that this community would be the most educated. As you can see, the chart definitely brings out other racial issues in the city, especially with the black community, but that would be a whole nother topic. Here you can see the median income by race in Pittsburgh. Asian community, despite having the highest education level, they are second lowest income race in the city. I think that's merely because many highly educated people tend to not stay in the city. They may only come to the city temporarily for a bachelor degree, master, etc. And if you observe the working people in this city, the Asian community, most of them are either in restaurant, spas, or other similar service sector of the city. And moving on to the pandemic and their effect on this community. As Rosemary Lee has pointed out on Wednesday, there have been a lot of aggressive or irrational behavior towards Asian Americans ever since this virus outbreak, and especially since the origin is from China. Although myself hasn't experienced any discriminatory behavior from others, but I have definitely knew people who had unfortunately experienced such hostility during this pandemic. And for international students like myself, it is a dilemma to decide whether stay or return home during such special time. There is issue on both sides whether stay or return. If you decide to go back home during this pandemic, you will likely face future issue regarding to finish your high-level education in the US. But if you decide to stay in the US, it's very likely you will be far away from your family support and etc. So it's understandable that many people would prefer to return to their family during such crisis. And in this article, you can see that some students have faced discrimination after they returned back home because there are many criticisms that international students have increased the infection rate by returning from overseas and etc. It is irrational for sure, but also to a certain degree understandable for this unprecedented pandemic. And that lies the issue for moving forward. In this atmosphere where in the US you start to have many people who don't want this quote-unquote foreigner coming into the country because of this pandemic. At the same time, so many students have experienced the hardship of returning back home. So it's very likely for several years down the road that we will see a decrease in the number of students coming to the US or even immigration as a whole. As you can see in this article, international students contribute a quite significant amount of economic income into the country. And as we all know, Throughout history, U.S. has been heavily relied on immigration. I mean, it's in my mind a foundational part of the country. So, in the future, when we do have a decrease in the number coming into the country, I think that would be a loss for the nation as a whole. And for the city, you can see that, and in this picture, you can see that Chinese or Mandarin is one of the largest immigration groups in Pittsburgh. If you have lived in the city for a while, you have also probably noticed that. And I think the city of Pittsburgh will also experience a similar decrease in the number of people coming here. And I would also consider that to be a loss for our local community. However, I don't think it makes sense for me to take side while this pandemic is still ongoing. As for those that are born and raised or permanently live in the US, but they may be Asian descendants, the best thing we can do is supporting them and try to be rationalized about this pandemic that they are not our enemies, but they are also part of this public health crisis. Yet the tricky part comes to the people who live here temporarily, which pretty much has been the theme of this discussion. I don't think I can, in good conscience, simply recommend people keep coming into the country as it is for now, because US is under a lot of stress and difficulty during this pandemic. Yet at the same time, I also don't want people to think that US is no longer viable as a destination for higher education. So for these people, I think the best thing I can say is wait for this pandemic to be ended, and then we can better assess whether you should be coming into the country, living, or whatever you want to do. As it stays right now, I think the most important thing is to rationalize your decision and weigh the advantage and the disadvantage of returning home at this time. And that's all. Thank you.